information indicates that although Christianity is by far the largest religion, the overall net flow in the United States has resulted in millions moving from Christianity to unaffiliated. Pew finds, over the past 15 years, the share of U.S. adults who identify as Christians, of all varieties combined, has dropped 15 percentage points, from 78% to 63%. The share who are nones has grown commensurately, rising by 1 point per year on average from 16% to nearly 30%. It seems certain that the church is in trouble and in the midst of a membership drop-off from which there is little respite. This numeric decline has been happening since the 1960s, though more notice has been taken of late because of the apparent change in attitude of emerging generations toward organized religion. But it doesn't have to be that way, as a personal story suggests. In 2003, my wife Denisha and I, Efrem, along with 22 others, set out to plant Sanctuary Covenant Church in the near-north community of Minneapolis, Minnesota. The original vision that I believe God gave me for this church was to create a Christ-centered community for the hip-hop generation in a North Minneapolis community that was 68% African American. I also had a passion for racial reconciliation that went all the way back to the moment I gave my life to Christ as a teenager at an outreach event, after hearing a message from Dr. John Perkins. Dr. Perkins, who almost lost his life during the civil rights movement in Mississippi, is a prophetic voice for racial reconciliation and righteousness, biblical justice, and Christian community development. The summer before my junior year in high school, my heart was transformed by his sermon on God's heart for unity, justice, and the dismantling of racism. Until that point, I had spent most of my life in a predominantly African American church. As a member of the hip-hop generation, I watched many of my African American friends leave the church or never attend at all. So when I sensed a call to church planting, I had both a passion for racial reconciliation and reaching the emerging generation of unchurched African Americans. I was not surprised that Sanctuary Covenant Church began as a multi-ethnic church. I was shocked, though, by the number of young white college students and young families who became part of our church. I still vividly remember our grand opening worship service in the auditorium of Minneapolis's Patrick Henry High School. I was standing next to Denisha backstage before the service began, peeking through the curtain like a kid before a school play. I noticed a lot of white people sitting throughout the auditorium. I had preached and shared the vision of the church at a couple of large white suburban churches that supported our church plant financially, so I wasn't surprised that some white people came to this grand opening service. But I was surprised that there were so many. "Look at all these white people," I said to Denisha. "What are you going to do if they all come back next week?" she asked me. Before I could answer, she answered her own question. "You're going to be their pastor." Week after week, as our church grew, more young white families came. I would soon get to know young married couples like Corey and Betsy, Jeremy and Sarah, and Jeremiah and Vanessa. They would become part of our worship and media teams. Jeremy would eventually come on staff as our communications and productions coordinator. Within the first year, our church grew to over 500 in attendance, and though multi-ethnic, was close to 60% white. I never compromised being my full African American self in preaching and occasionally singing in our worship services. Once a month, we had a hip-hop worship service. Our week-to-week praise and worship sound, for the most part, was of the urban contemporary gospel genre. And yet, we had a growing population of young white adults committing to our church. They weren't just coming to our church, though. They were teachers, social workers, nonprofit executives, and new residents in a predominantly African American and under-resourced urban community. They were no longer interested in their parents' and grandparents' predominantly white evangelical or mainline church, nor were they interested